In this video, we will learn how to make form fields in Dreamweaver. Probably the most common would be a contact form. We will not, in this beginning class, make this 100% functional. That involves a bunch of advanced coding. But it will be there, it will be ready, and in the instance of professional workflow, that's probably all the further you would take it anyway than a coder would come in and make it work. However, if you do want to learn how to do it, come see me. I'll show you some videos that would take you to that. Also, if you're thinking, well, why should I put a whole bunch of effort into the website if my contact page wouldn't work at first, which is important to me, we could do a workaround too. You could have your contact actually go to the contact page on a WordPress website that you have just for that purpose, just for the contact page, and people would still be able to get a hold of you. Besides that, the 000 hosting the free website with contact pages, we've had nothing but trouble in the past. Even when we had Muse, which had a simple, drop and play contact form, people just couldn't get it to work with the settings inside of the free web hosting. Getting a preview of what this could look like inside of the site that has the navigation on the aside, but the instructions for each one is identical until some very last CSS stages. So just ignore my two test pages up here, get your website opened up, and open up in particular the contact page. Right now we just have some placeholder information in there, and it is all inside of section. For inserting a form, it helps to have at least one tag of content in here. So for example, I'm going to delete the paragraph that's in here, but I am going to leave the H2 for now, even though I won't want it in the end. But it helps, as you'll see in just a second here. Side panels here, you want to be in insert mode, and you want the topic to be form. And pay very close attention to my code as compared to the code that you get. And let me just show you what you don't want. You don't want to just get the form tags. And if you're clicked in down here in the code and you just go to form and you click it, you get that. You don't want that. So I'm going to Command Z. So what you want to do is get a hold of something up here in the preview. So again, I'll grab the H2, and I want to actually click right here just to make sure that the H2 is indeed selected. Now when I go over to form, it brings up this little thing. It's basically asking me, where do you want to put it? Well, I want it right after the H2 so that it's firmly in the section, so I'm going to click after. Now that's what you want to see, is not only the form tags, but all of this stuff here. And what this is for, this is how you get the information over to your website with any type of form. So it needs IDs, names, and methods so that that information can go to your server and then make its way back to you. Okay, so now let's put our first item inside of that form, and I'm going to go back up here. I'm going to click on form just to make sure that that is what's highlighted, and then we're going to go to text. This will end up being the person's name. So we click on it. This little thing comes up again. This time we want it nest. We want it nested inside of our form. So we click there, and you can see that it adds the label for it and the actual input box. And if you previewed that, you'd see there's a label that says text field, and we'll just actually right now just go ahead and change that to name. You can see it changes. Then next we need the email. So let's do this. Let's click right here on the input, and then let's go up here. Let's click email, and then we're going to select after because we want it to go right after the email. So there we go. And because it was email, it already has the email label for us. Now we'll just make sure that we have this selected again, and we'll add one more thing, which is the text area, which is where the person would type the message to you. So it's a little bit down in the menu right here. Click that. Again, click after, And now you can see we have the basic items in there. Previewing in the browser, you can see it's a little bit of a mess. We can go back into Dreamweaver and we can get rid of this placeholder that they put in there for us. And then we will start to write the CSS. Giving you a little preview of what's to come, and if you're a quick typer and you just like writing code this way, you can go ahead and type this in. But for those of you who want a little bit of a background on it, I'll fill you in. So basically, you remember there's three ways that you can write CSS. You can put it on an external sheet, you can put it up at the top in the head of this page, or you can write it right after the tag. This is one of those few instances where it makes sense to write it right after the tag, because each thing is slightly different from the next. So we write it for the actual input field, and basically the two things that we need to accomplish is we change the width to 100% so that it fills up whatever screen real estate is available, but then we go in after and we adjust that so it's not ridiculously big. But this just seems to make the most sense to me. So back to where you're at would be right here. You just look for the first label that comes up, and right here you would just go ahead and you would put in your style, and you can experiment with this in the name of learning. You can just put in exactly what I do and then change it whatever you want to do. But at this point, I'm just going to copy and paste everything in, just like what you saw on the other page, and show you what it did up until that point. And I just have some spaces in here as I work. But you can see that the first change takes place right here, and that is for this input and style, margin bottom, 35 pixels, and a width of 100%. Then the next one is this input for the email, and margin top of 5 pixels, margin bottom of 35 pixels, again a width of 100%. And then the third and last one, margin top 10 pixels, width of 100%. So you can see they all have a width of 100%. This is something else that I added here as well. This is code that this is not CSS, this is just a property for the text area, and it just makes that text area box for comment or the content of the email a little bit longer, and it just looks a little bit better. So if we do a file, save all, and preview in the browser, you can see that this is where we're at right now, which is better than we started with, but it's kind of ridiculously long. There's no need for it to fill up the whole area, and me putting in 8 rows made this comment section go down further. So how do we get this to contain within an area? We'll do basically the same thing we did to the home page, which now this is really bothering me that this home text is centered, but we'll take care of that in a later video. So yeah, let's get these looking very similar. So if you remember, what we did to make this work was we put it inside of a paragraph, naturally, but we made the paragraph so that it had auto margins. So if we do the same thing to this entire form, we should get a very similar result. Put the auto and also a max width. Head start in writing that property, we can just copy this paragraph tag and paste it in an open spot here on our CSS. And then what we will do is make it a class so that we can just easily apply it to our form. And so font size, we'll keep that. We don't need to put padding in here, but the main thing is keeping that max width so that it looks good in your site. In my case, about 600 was fine, and then the margins of auto. And so let's just change this to, remember the period makes it a class, and we will make this for the okay, so now when we go into the source code, we're just going to add that class to the section because that contains the form. And that would be contact. And it looks like it's already doing that, keeping the width reasonable. That's what it looks like in the browser, and as you can see, we just need to get rid of that placeholder now, which I believe is just our H2 tag. Yep, right here. And now we have a contact page that's custom tailored to our website with our colors. And you can change any of this. If what I did doesn't match yours, remember you have the ability to change the font color, but that should have carried through. But you could even change the color of these boxes by putting a background color into the form field itself. Let's talk about any differences now for the website that has the navigation on the aside. Okay, so with the same code, you'd be looking at something like this. And let me see if I can make this smaller. It's not exactly ideal here. You can see if the browser window gets smaller, it starts to look pretty nasty pretty quick. So two things you can do. One, if you want it to float in the middle, basically the identical version that we just did and having your contact float in the auto center. I'll show you how to do that in just a second. But if you like it being, more to the left, which there's absolutely nothing wrong with, what you should do is go back into the code here and get rid of margin auto, and then play around with your own left margin and test it out in the browser. Now, if you do like the idea of it floating around in the middle, then what we need to do is we just need to apply this class to a new container that we'll make so that we can get it to float inside. So hopefully that'll make sense. We're going to look at right now, it's inside of this thing called section, which is, inside of the body, and it's floated left. What we want to do is put another container inside of section and then apply auto, and that should make it float in the center. So the way you do that, the generic container is what they call a div tag. Used to be used zillions of times until HTML5 introduced all the new things like section and aside and so on. So we're going to take this div, we're going to put it right after section, but we don't want it to close until right before section. So we're going to cut this closing div tag, we're going to go to the bottom, and right before section here, we're going to paste that in. Then we're going to come up here and we're going to take class of contact and we're going to cut that out of the section and paste it into the div that we just made. And with the save all in a preview in the browser, what you have here is a little bit friendlier version of that. And that takes care of the contact form. And next videos, we'll work on getting all the little details down and getting it ready to publish.